Today we're here to dedicate the dinosaur track showcase. This whole project got started when Alice Stewart, who donated the land for the library, approached me and asked me if I would donate a dinosaur track, and I said I would. And after I thought about it a little bit, I told her that, well, I would put together kind of an exhibit if you can come up with a showcase. And so Janice and I began to kind of look around for a showcase, and finally the Connecticut Valley Mineral Club donated some money for it, and the Granby Library had some money the monies were brought together, and this purchased this really nice showcase. I'd like to thank the Connecticut Valley Mineral Club for their donation. It's a really nice showcase. It displays the basic fossils associated with the dinosaurs that you find here in the valley. I want to thank especially Jack Marcy, who really was kind of the driving force about getting it all done, and I just want to thank him for that. I want to thank the library for its funding, providing for it. And also I would like to thank Janice McCardle, who was very helpful in me getting this all set up right. She provided a lot of the logistics, or a lot of the support right here at the library. This is also kind of celebrates the history of dinosaurs in Granby. The first dinosaur track ever found was found in 1802 in South Hadley, actually, near Moody Corner, South Hadley. But it was not very much inside South Hadley, and actually the geological layer that where the first dinosaur track was found is very similar to the dinosaur track where I find the dinosaur tracks at my place. Pliny Moody found the first track. It was like this one right here. He found it in 1802. He dug it, he was plowing a field, and he found the track, brought it home, and put it in the family doorstep. It was there for maybe 5 to 10 years, and then about the time Pliny went off to college, it was sold to Dr. Dwight of South Hadley. And it was in his possession for about 30 years until Professor Hitchcock became aware of it, obtained it, and donated it to Amherst College. And it's actually hanging on the Benesky Natural History Museum at Amherst College. I think it's the only dinosaur track that actually has a name tag on it identifying what it is. Also, my father, who actually lived near the original Pliny Moody site, grew up there. He had a child interest in dinosaurs. He knew they were around, and in 1933 he started looking around to find some dinosaur tracks of his own. He was able to find the location where we have the Nash dinosaur tracks today, and he was not able to buy the land right away, but in 1939 he was able to buy the land, and we've been quarrying and selling tracks from that parcel on Aldrich Street ever since. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Greengrass, who began the Granby Dinosaur Museum in about 1975 until about 1985. He also brought a new energy to the dinosaur tracks in the area, and he was in business for about 10 years, I think. This showcase shows the basic fossils that you will find if you if you dig deep enough in Granby, you probably could find any of this stuff. The top shelf has what I call inorganic fossils. They tell you a lot about the environment in which the dinosaur tracks are found. The one over here is a mud crack, which means there was a mud flat. It did get wet, it flooded, maybe some places several feet of water. But eventually the mud would dry out, the water would go away, and the mud would dry out and get cracks. And then also, but when there's water around, you also get ripple marks like in the centerpiece. So that tells you there was water environment. There's also, with ripple marks, you can tell what type of water. If you have symmetrical waves, where the waves, the slope is equal on both sides, that means it's a lake environment. It's from the wind blowing the waves back and forth. However, if you have flowing water, you have asymmetrical waves, which are like this, and that means the water is flowing in that direction. At my place, I find a lot of asymmetrical waves, which means the water was flowing into the edge of the lake at my point. I believe at Mr. Gingrass's place, the Granby Dinosaur Museum, he has more symmetrical waves, which means he was in the water more of the time. But I'm not quite as fully sure about that. I think it varied at his spot. But also rarely, sometimes you have the water flood the mud. As the water recedes, that last storm of the season, maybe a hailstorm, maybe a rainstorm, would come and make little rain mark impressions in the mud. And so this is raindrop impressions. This tells us that the environment was very much like the Rift Valley of East Africa today. It was hot, it was dry most of the year, but you had a monsoon season where the whole valley would become basically a big mud puddle. And as the water went away, you got these different types of inorganic fossils. But also you find a lot of fossils other than dinosaurs. Here's a fossil fish, which means there were permanent lakes in the valley. Most of the valley was a dry mud flat most of the year, but there were these permanent lakes, kind of like an oasis lake. So there's a fish. Also, you have a Batrachopus track, which is not a dinosaur track, but is actually an early crocodile reptile. And if you look at this slab, there's actually the front and rear foot are together. So there's two toes, two footprints, and two footprints. The third one here is an insect burrow, or a kind of a larva that crawl just underneath the surface of the mud. And this is actually can tell you a lot about the environment. What type of insects you have around will tell you about the environment. There's actually a man who just got a PhD on just studying the insect burrows. Petrified wood varies widely over the valley. If you were at the edge of a lake, there was a lot more plant material, so you will find a lot more plant materials. At my place, I find a lot of plant material, which means I was at the edge of the lake. It was a environment that was very rich in fossils. Other places, if you're up on the mud flat that was dry most of the year, you get very little plant material. But this is all these are the four basic ways you find organic fossils that tell you something about the environment, but are not dinosaurs. However, the bottom three shelves are all about dinosaurs, which most people are interested in. I'll start over here on this side with three tracks. This is a growler track, this is an Anchisaurus track, this is a Eubrontes track. That's the name of the track. It's for classification purposes. If it's 3 to 6 inches long, it's a growler track. If it's 6 to 10 inches, it's an Anchisaurus track. And if it's over 10 inches, it's a Eubrontes track. These dinosaurs, I think the biggest one they found is a 23-inch track. Generally, from toe to heel, for every inch of track, there's about one foot of dinosaur. So say that's about a 5-inch track, it's about a 5-foot long dinosaur. This is about a 7-inch long track, so it's about a 7-foot long dinosaur. I believe this is about a 12-inch track, so it's about a 12-foot long dinosaur. I put pictures at the side here. They're all three pictures are the same. What they feel is, and they don't know for sure, that this is a juvenile dinosaur that grew up to be a young adult, which grew up to be a mature adult. So these are meat eaters. There are a couple other rarer meat eaters, but these are the three main meat eating tracks. Associated with the growler track is the Podokesaurus. Podokesaurus was a skeleton found by Professor Talbot in about 1910, and she brought it back to Mount Holyoke College. She prepared it. She wrote a scientific paper on it in 1911. And for a number of years they had it, people studied it. But in 1917, the science building at Mount Holyoke College burned to the ground and they lost it. However, they had made 2 pretty good copies of it, and they'd actually taken a couple good photographs of it. So they know what it's like, but they don't actually have the actual fossil anymore. However, Professor Talbot was one of the early pioneer women of in geology, and she grew up in Iowa City, Iowa, but she ended up at Mount Holyoke College. The next shelf down is, you have the Anchisaurus, but you have also over here the Anemepus tract. That's the main plant eater. There's 3 main meat-eating tract and 1 main plant eater. This is the one that in history is very important. The story goes in 1802, a young farm boy by the name of Pliny Moody found the dinosaur tract, and this is the type of tract he found. It eventually ended up at Amherst College, but this is a picture of what it looked like, and there's a description of the founding of the first tract and a picture out of Pliny Moody's footmark quarry in South Hadley. It comes out of the first edition of Ichnology of Massachusetts by Professor Hitchcock. And then there's a picture of Professor Hitchcock, who wrote this book, who was the driving force in really doing the scientific study of dinosaur tracks. There are a few other people working, but he was the main one that began the field of ichnology. Ichnology is the study of trace fossils. When you have a fossil here, that's actually a fossil fish. That's the actual organic organism. When you have a dinosaur tract, it's an indication or a trace of an organic organism. So this is a trace fossil. He began the science of it. Down here we have a couple baby dinosaur tracks. We really aren't quite sure what dinosaur they would have grown up to be. At the smaller age, or when they're smaller like that, you really aren't sure whether they grew up to be a plant eater or grew up to be a meat eater. And finally, I put in a description of what the climate was like, what Granby would have been like at the time of the dinosaurs. As far as location, we were a little bit north of the equator, about where Cuba is today. So it was a hot climate. We were instead of a large continent called Pangea that was splitting apart. And as it split apart, a rift valley formed. Basically, a rift valley is where you have a fault line along the east side of the valley. As the continents pulled apart, the valley sunk like this, and the mountains eroded into that valley. That fault line today is about, if you go to Belchertown, and just before you come to the center of town, you will go over some railroad tracks. Those railroad tracks are sitting right on the fault line. So that's what's called the eastern border fault that runs from about Vermont all the way down to Long Island Sound. So anyway, I just again want to thank the Granby Library and the Conecuh Valley Mineral Club for coming up with the monies for the showcase. I think this is good to celebrate the history of dinosaurs in Granby. And I think as people in Granby are digging maybe cellar holes or construction of some sort, sometimes they will find some of this rock. And maybe they will keep an eye open and they'll actually maybe find the dinosaur track or some of the other fossils that are found. What's very common in certain spots, dinosaur tracks and ripple marks. That's what I would probably the two most common things found. Again, I want to thank everybody that was involved in this, and I hope the town of Granby enjoys it.
Good morning. My name is Jack Marcy, and I'm the current president of the Connecticut Valley Mineral Club. And in addition to the dedication of Kornell dinosaur tracks and cases, the Mineral Club would like to present to the library one of our Massachusetts mineral display cases. It comprises of a dinosaur track also, but the Massachusetts State Gemstone, Rhodonite, some galena, which is lead, woodenstone, which is the state rock, some margarite from Chester, garnet, and Babingtonite, which is the state mineral, Massachusetts. So the education committee portion of the Connecticut Valley Mineral Club has been putting these together for a couple of years now. Each time they do it, it looks even better. And so what I'd like to do is call Jennifer in and present this to her. Julia, who is off today, was in charge of the children's section, will only get to see this on tape. Come a little closer. So on behalf of the Connecticut Valley Mineral Club, we'd like to present this case to you, which can go in between the other two cases on the table.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
We have a lot of good connection with the library here. I come and do some rock and mineral talks. I'm scheduled for June, July, and August for 3 different Saturdays. We have some other mineral display cases on the other part of the children's room. And it's just been a lot of fun, and they're great people to work with. So we hope you enjoy all of this.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I love
you.
it. Thank you.